Hello and welcome back to Boardroom Insights with Alan O'Neill. I'd like to take some time with you today to reflect on happenings in the Middle East and a few thoughts I've been having over that time and watching how the world is shaping up, in particular in the Gulf region where I spend a lot of my time. And I just thought I'd just share with you some of my own reflections on what I'm seeing. Because over the past number of days, just like many people, I've been watching all the events unfold in the Middle East with a mixture of concern and reflection. I mean, the tensions around Iran have created massive uncertainty across the region, and whenever whenever moments like this arise, they remind us how quickly the world can feel really unpredictable. I mean, for me, living and working frequently in the UAE, I've also been paying close attention to the response from the government and its rulers. And it's something that deserves recognition. Because over the past 4 or 5 decades, the leadership of the UAE has steadily built something that goes way beyond infrastructure, skyscrapers, or even economic growth. What they have really built is trust. And that trust is between leadership and its citizens, between institutions and the people that they serve, and trust also among the millions of expats who have chosen to make the UAE their home. Now, trust, of course, doesn't just appear overnight. It is something that is earned slowly through consistent behavior over time. We know that as leaders. In leadership terms, trust rests on three pillars: ability, dependability, and integrity. People trust leaders when they believe that those leaders are capable, that they know what they're doing. When they believe they will do what they say they will do, they're dependable. And when they believe that their intentions are honourable, that's integrity. Now, what's striking in moments of uncertainty, like the one we're currently experiencing and witnessing, is that these qualities become visible very quickly. When pressure appears, the accumulated trust that's been built up over many years, it either holds firm or it evaporates. And in the case of the UAE, what we are seeing is the result of decades of steady leadership. Citizens and expats alike have been speaking openly about the calmness of the response. I've seen this on social media myself every single day. They're reassured about the reassurance that systems are in place and about the sense that people are being looked after. Now, that is when you realize that trust, when it has been built carefully over many, many years, it becomes one of the most stabilizing forces that any society can possess. Now, over the past number of days, since Saturday, today is Wednesday, like many people, I've also been watching events unfold across the wider region with a mixture of concern, reflection, and some anxiety, because the tensions around Iran have created that massive uncertainty far beyond its borders. And when moments like this arise, they remind us how fragile that normality can be, that sense of normality. We go about our daily lives assuming that the structures around us are stable, and then suddenly something shifts. And we're reminded that the world is shaped by forces much larger than ourselves. Now, what has struck me most, however, is not the politics and not the headlines, while they're very real and very palpable. It's the behaviour of ordinary people. Because in my own conversations with family, with friends and colleagues across the GCC region, I hear something quite startling and interesting. Alongside the uncertainty, there's also appreciation. And that appreciation is for stability, the appreciation for the leadership, and the appreciation for communities that are looking after one another. It reminds me that even in moments of uncertainty, the true character of a society becomes visible, and the true character of communities becomes visible. When everything is stable, almost any system can appear effective. But when the ground beneath begins to move, when events beyond our control ripple across borders and economies, we begin to see the deeper foundations that hold communities together. Now, in my own work as a change management consultant, I often describe the external environment using the familiar PESTLE framework. PESTLE, P-E-S-T-L-E, that's for political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental forces. They all shape the context in which organizations and the world operates. And, most of the times these forces move very slowly, just like tectonic plates beneath the surface. We know they exist, but we rarely feel massive change within them directly. Then occasionally something happens that reminds us just how powerful those forces really are. It could be a geopolitical event like right now, a financial crisis back in 2008, a global pandemic back in 2020, or a sudden conflict that can shift those plates abruptly and create tremors that ripple far beyond the original event. Now, when that happens, organizations alike similarly are tested. The question is no longer whether the environment is stable, because obviously it isn't, but whether the culture inside the system is strong enough to absorb that shock. And that is where trust becomes a critical factor. Even in my own academic research and my writings, particularly in the work on my next book, which I'm calling Hearts, Minds and Bottom Lines, which is all about culture, I talk about the three conditions that allow organizations and communities to remain resilient over time. They are trust, tolerance, and time horizon. Now, talk about those another day, but of those three, I want to talk about trust. It's the one that tends to matter most in moments of sudden uncertainty like now. Trust is not something that can be manufactured in a crisis. It is built gradually, as I said, often quietly, over long periods of time. And that's built through consistent behavior, fairness, transparency, and through a shared belief that people will look after one another when it matters. Now, that's why moments of disruption reveal so much. They show us whether the foundations were truly there all along. Now, you know where I'm going here, because that same principle applies inside organizations. Companies, just like societies, they also can experience their own seasonal trends and disruptions. There are periods of expansion and optimism when everything seems to move in the right direction. However, there are also periods when the external environment shifts, like now, and those tectonic plates move things, and suddenly pressure appears from unexpected places. Markets can change, competitors emerge, oil prices go up, impacting energy, regulations evolve, and occasionally a crisis erupts that no one could have predicted. This one, we didn't anticipate the reaction to this. One of the most famous examples, by the way, in business history, and I studied it recently, it occurred in 1982 when a shocking incident in Chicago, it shook the manufacturers of Tylenol, the painkiller, and that's owned by a company called Johnson & Johnson. Several people unfortunately died after capsules on shop shelves had been deliberately laced with cyanide by someone outside the company. Now, overnight, one of America's most trusted brands, it faced a crisis that could easily have destroyed the company. But what happened next has been studied in business schools ever since. Rather than trying to minimize the issue or protect short-term profits, the leadership of Johnson & Johnson made some might say an obvious decision, but it was a big decision that reflected the culture that was embedded in the company's long-standing ethos. They immediately recalled millions of bottles of Tylenol from shelves across the country at enormous cost, $100 million or something, because they believed that protecting the public had to come before protecting the brand. Now, ultimately, they did protect the brand. It was an extraordinary decision at the time, yet what followed proved something really important, because the company had acted transparently and decisively. Public trust was not destroyed. In many ways, it was strengthened by what they did. And within a year, Tylenol had regained its market leadership, and the incident became one of the most powerful examples of how culture and trust can carry an organization through its most challenging and difficult times, or season, to use my analogy. Now, when I reflect on moments like that, and when I observe how communities respond during uncertain periods in the world around us, I'm also reminded that resilience rarely starts at the time of the crisis. It begins long before in the relationships, the behaviors, in other words, the culture that shape how people interact every day. Now, whether we're talking about national culture, like in the UAE, communities, or organizational culture, the same truth seems to apply. Because the external environment will always move in phases and cycles and trends. And occasionally those cycles bring awful, sudden shocks like what we're experiencing now. The real question is whether the culture inside the system, I guess the trust between the people, the willingness to support one another, the patience to think beyond the right now, the immediate moment, that's got to be strong. Is it strong enough to absorb the shocks when they arrive? Because when it is, something really remarkable tends to happen. Because even when the tectonic plates shift or the community then steadies itself, and that is the quiet lesson that's worth remembering right now in these uncertain times. As I close, I want to return to the UAE because, in my sense, few countries in the world have demonstrated the same clarity of purpose and steadiness of leadership over the past half century. What we're witnessing today is not accidental. It's the result of years of trust that has been patiently built by the leaders over decades. That trust is grounded again in ability, dependability, and integrity. Now, when moments of uncertainty do arrive, that foundation becomes visible in how leaders act, how institutions respond, and how society and community holds together. The UAE has shown the world that when leadership earns trust over time, it creates resilience when it matters most. And perhaps that's the quiet lesson here. The real strength of a nation, just like the strength of any organization, is the culture and the trust it has built long before the crisis arrives. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and take care. Bye for now.